across the heart of Cowboys country. It's your opportunity to ask questions to Cowboys insider Mickey Spagnola. This is Silver Star Nation Interactive.
Oh, this is going to be a good show. The questions have just been pouring in the last few days following another disappointing performance from the Cowboys offense. Welcome to the Silver Star Nation Interactive Show, everyone. I'm Ben Creighton filling in for Wes Moore today. This show is for all of you Cowboy fans. This is your chance to have your questions answered. Make sure to use the hashtag AskMickey, and your question may end up on here. And speaking of Mickey, let's bring in the man of the hour. Mickey Spagnola joins us from the Star in Frisco. Mickey, how you doing aside from the loss on Sunday? Hope it was a decent trip at least to the Pacific Northwest.
Oh, it's always a decent trip to the Pacific Northwest, and I'm doing just fine. Good to be with you, Ben.
All right, let's get things going. Right off the bat, what's the latest with Sean Lee and that hamstring injury?
Yeah, it looks like he restrained the hamstring that was bothering him going into the game, and I think they're going to be a little bit more conservative this time around with it. So to me, when I hear that, he's going to miss a game or two. Make sure they get this thing right and it doesn't continue to reoccur. You remember he went through it last year and, just did everything he could to strengthen that deal in the offseason. And even during the preseason, during training camp, worked extra on the side. They kept him out of a lot of the team activity, really didn't play much in the preseason, and then all it took was the third game and the thing goes out again. So I think they'll, for sure, at least a game or two I think he would miss and just try to get this thing right.
And, we know how valuable Sean is to this Cowboys defense. I mean, how big of a loss is this for this Cowboys defense? Well,
if you look back to last year, when he was out, they just couldn't win a game. They struggled defensively. When he was in, they were awfully good. Now, if there's a silver lining this year, at least they sort of planned ahead in case this happened. And one of the reasons why they drafted Leighton Vander Esch in the first round. And he came in that game against Seattle and played only 33 plays, but he had 11 tackles, 9 solo tackles, and 1 tackle for a loss. So I think they're better prepared, at least from a physical standpoint, to withstand this. What you lose, and certainly a rookie that's just played 3 games, is not going to replace Sean Lee's ability to get everybody organized, to make the defensive calls, to kind of anticipate what's going to happen before it happens. And that's what makes him so valuable, not just the fact that in the little bit he played in the game, he ended up with 11 tackles also, but just getting everybody lined up correctly. And it's hard for them to replace that. Now, I think Jalen Smith has to step up and do some of that, maybe do all of it, because I don't think you can expect Leighton Vander Esch to take on that leadership role so early in his career. Give him a year, and I think he can do that. And I think you saw how versatile he is on the defense with his ability to move laterally and to be where the ball's coming from. So good thing that he's there. They also have Joe Thomas, who they started using a little bit more in that Seattle game. So maybe from a physical standpoint, they're better equipped. But from a leadership standpoint, boy, it's sure hard to replace Sean Lee.
All right, Mickey, let's go on the opposite side of the ball now. It's not that surprising that almost all the viewer questions we've gotten are about the offense. Not a lot of productivity so far. 41 total points through week 3. The Cowboys have only gotten into the end zone twice in their 2 losses to Carolina and Seattle. And when you talk about the passing game, Dak Prescott hasn't thrown for over 200 yards in the last 5 games going back to last season, which leads us, I should say, to our first question from Big Ed. He asks, in your opinion on our offense, do you see a problem with the scheme or the personnel?
I see a problem with the offensive line to start off with. If you look at the games they've lost, he's been sacked 11 times, hit 20 times. And a hit in the NFL on the statistics sheet means the quarterback's either getting hit right before he throws the ball or right after or as he throws the ball. So that'll create a problem for a quarterback for sure. So first and foremost, to me, the Cowboys have to do a better job of blocking. Of being able to protect the quarterback. And it's not all just one-on-one stuff either on that offensive line. It's also being able to pick up defensive games, schemes, when they're looping and when they're blitzing. They've got to do a better job than that. And let's not forget that Travis Frederick's not out there. Now, I understand Joe Looney's a backup, and he's helped out at center. I think he's done a good job. But the gap between a backup and a four-time Pro Bowler is usually pretty large. And again, sort of like with the Sean Lee thing, Travis Frederick gets everybody organized, everybody lined up, makes the line calls, and been doing it now during his career and never missed a game until this year. So they miss him. You got a rookie at left guard, Connor Williams. Again, not bad, but it's a change. And La'el Collins at right tackle really hasn't played as well, I think, as he did towards the end of last year. So when you have protection problems, you're probably going to have problems at quarterback. Now, as a scheme standpoint, you know, can they figure out the running game, but they can't figure out the passing game? Because right now, after 3 games, Ezekiel Elliott's tied for the league lead in rushing with 274 yards. So they're doing something right there. They just can't seem to get the passing game unwound. And to me, a lot of it has to do with the protection problems they continue to have. He didn't get sacked once in the game against the Giants. And what did they do? They ended up winning. And I know 20 points is nothing to go scream about, but it was a step in the right direction. And then when you get sacked 5 times and hit another 10 times, and you lose a fumble and you have a pass bounce off your receiver's hands that should have been caught into an interception, you're probably going to have trouble in the passing game.
This one from America's team, We Dem Boys. He asks, do you think Dak and the offense do eventually start to click and win games? And he also asks, do you see the Cowboys possibly calling Dez Bryant?
I don't see him calling Dez Bryant. I just think that ship has sailed. But I do think that this offense can improve as the weeks go along. You know, my point last week was the defense has to continue to play awfully well to buy time for this offense to continue to get better, to continue to progress, because it was never a finished product when they started the season. And unfortunately, against Seattle, they had 2 big busts in coverage, which led to 2 of the 3 Seattle touchdowns. If you don't have those busts, you might be still in the game. They can't afford that. And they can't afford for that defensive front, which is still second in the league with 11 sacks, to only sack Russell Wilson twice when he had been sacked a dozen times in his first 2 games. So the defense just continues to have to be better till the offense catches up.
You talk about Ezekiel Elliott, definitely a bright spot for the Cowboys in that loss to Seattle. But knowing how well he has been, I got to bring up Chris Baker's question here. He asked, with the Cowboys' lack of offensive productivity with a top 3 running back, in his opinion, will there be a change in quarterback, offensive coordinator, or head coach before the 2019 season? He says he's really hoping all 3 are in play for the offseason. And I know there's a lot of people that are really upset with Scott Linehan and Jason Garrett just because of those offensive troubles.
Yeah, and you know, the weird thing is, number one, it's 3 games, and I understand it. And everybody wants to go back to last year, the last 8 games of the season. But there was some reasons for that, right? No Sean Lee, no Tyron Smith, no Ezekiel Elliott. And in the games they lost, I understand that. But they had a 3-game winning streak in there before. Oh, by the way, they got beat by Seattle. And they averaged over 30 points a game in those 3 games. So Linehan just kind of forgot what he's supposed to do. Jason Garrett forgot what he was supposed to do. You know, if you look at the first 8 games of the season last year, when everything was intact, they averaged 28 points a game in those 8 games. So suddenly Linehan doesn't know how to call plays. The head coach doesn't know how to coach anymore. It just kind of happened overnight. I think you have to look into maybe some of the reasons of what's going on with the team, and you can't always put everything in a box and put a nice bow on it and say, oh, look at this. Look at each game and see what happened and why it happened. And I think you'd have a better answer than having to just kind of rush into a decision and let's fire everybody.
I completely agree with you. You know, like you said, it's only been 3 games. Let's give it a little bit more time. I know they're struggling on offense, but you never know. They can turn it around. From me, in your opinion, can you see this offense really turning the page, turning this thing around after just 3 games? And how can they improve going forward?
Well, first and foremost, by playing together and getting some better execution. I mean, think about this. You've got 2 different guys now starting on the offensive line. You almost have a whole new host of receivers. You have all new tight ends, basically, save Jeff Swain, who caught 9 passes last year. And I just don't think these things come together just automatically because you want them to. Now, are the Cowboys at fault maybe for not stocking that offense with better personnel in the offseason? You know, you can make an argument for that if you want. But again, you do have salary cap ramifications when it comes to that. I just thought that this team was not a finished product when it began the season. And if you go back and look at my column that I wrote on DallasCowboys.com the Friday before the season started, I said, if you're willing to wait and be patient and watch this team grow, you just might see something. But don't expect them to get off to a 5-0 start because it's not going to happen. And obviously it isn't happened. Now, you would hope it would be better than what it has been. But if you look at some things that happened in the game, you know, what if, and I know it's hard for people to play what if, but what if Zeke doesn't have his toes step out of bounds on what would have been that touchdown pass? What if Michael Gallup catches the ball thrown to him instead of bouncing off his hands into an interception to Earl Thomas? The same thing with Blake Jarwin in the pass over the middle on the other interception. And then Zeke running with the ball downfield for 26 yards, gets into the red zone, and doesn't have the ball in his left hand like he should. He had it in his right hand. It comes out, and they lose a fumble. So there's some things there that the play caller can't fix. And the way this offense is right now, to me, with the personnel, they don't have the ability to overcome that many mistakes. And I think that's the biggest problem. Not the play calls, not the organization, but when you make mistakes like that and you're kind of on the border with your personnel, all sort of new, then you're going to have some problems. And I think you need to look at it that way. Now, if we get to 1-7 and these problems persist, then I'll give in and say, okay, yeah, they've got some problems. But 1-2, you know, I think there's a team out in the Northeast that's 1-2 right now, and I bet they're not calling for the head coach's head.
The perfect segue right there. Okay, we got a couple seconds left. Mickey, let's wrap it up with this. Detroit Lions come into Jerry's World. Obviously a very impressive win over those New England Patriots back on Sunday Night Football. I know we still got a couple more days until kickoff, but what are your 3 keys so far for this Cowboys-Lions matchup coming up on Sunday?
Well, first and foremost, the defense has to keep their offense in check, just the way I was talking about. I think, secondly, they've got to protect Dak. They've got to be able to give him time to operate in the pocket and not having to move around as much as he had. And then third, they just can't hand out gifts. They're not good enough to overcome 3 turnovers and not get any yourself. So if you're looking ahead, I think keep an eye on those 3 things going forward. And then when I give you my keys on Saturday, we'll see if they change or they're exactly the same.
Mickey, as always, really appreciate it. This is always fun to do. I'm kind of jealous that Wes gets to do this every single week. I might take a spot, honestly. I might just kick Wes off this desk. This is so much fun. Mickey,
we'll
really
go
appreciate it.
Sabotage him, right? Yeah. Okay, good to be with you.
Yeah, appreciate it, Mickey. We'll talk to you again next week. And again, like I said before, Cowboy fans, this is all about you. Keep sending us your questions. #AskMickey. We'll be back here every week at 3 o'clock for a whole lot more. We'll see you next week.